So good evening. Today we will be going over Isn't Her Grace Amazing? The Women Who Changed Gospel Music by Cheryl Wells. I am Dr. Felicia Durden, and it's a pleasure to be hosting and doing this book for our month. First, let's talk a little bit about the author, Cheryl Wells. Cheryl Wells is an award-winning reporter and journalist. She works with Spectrum News. And she's also the host of Essence Festival's All-Star Gospel Tribute. She's done that for several years. But another thing about her is that she is an author of other books. So some of her other books are Die Free, Emma, which is a picture book. Another picture book, The Emancipation of Grandpa's Andy's Wills, and Emancipation, My Family's Fight for Freedom. So she is an author and she writes children's books, but this book meant a lot to her and just reading about it, that she wanted to write this book because her family had an interest in gospel music. And so this book was a brainchild of hers to do. I heard that because volume 1, sometimes everyone's favorites are not in here. She's actually working on a volume 2. So there's another book that's going to come out with even more amazing women gospel singers.
Good.
Okay, so gospel in America. Gospel music's been around in America, especially Black gospel music. It started in slavery, where songs were sang in order to give clues, like when the Underground Railroad was coming, or to let people know when they were going to try to escape. But in the civil rights movement, it also was very important. And so here's a short clip that I'm going to show you about gospel and civil rights. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then we're going to go to the screen. All right, Chris, 1 second. Should be this one.
Founded in 1962 by 4 organizers from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, the Freedom Singers would travel across the country performing what became the soundtrack of civil rights marches and rallies, raising desperately needed funds to support SNCC's operations and civil rights work. One of those singers was 21-year-old Rutha Mae Harris. What was the relationship between the freedom songs you were singing and the songs from the church?
Well, the freedom songs were taken from gospel, congregational hymns. The only thing we had to do was change the lyrics to fit the occasion, whatever it was. Like, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. The only thing we had to change was I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom.
How important do you think your music was to the success of the civil rights movement?
Personally, I feel that without the songs of the civil rights movement, there wouldn't have been a movement because the song kept us from being afraid. Say you're walking down the street doing a march and this policeman tell you you're gonna be hit or whatever. You start singing, I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around.
Right.
Not even the chief of police.
Not even a billy club.
Not even a billy club.
Okay, we'll stop there. 1 second. So as we see, gospel music has had a strong influence on the civil rights movement during slavery. And I thought that clip really shared a lot, the Freedom Singers and how they sang songs during the civil rights movement. If any of us remember watching video clips, or if we lived during that era, singing was something that was done, and it was gospel music that was sang. That had to do with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was the founder, and who we really think about when we think about civil rights marches. They would walk hand in hand and sing those songs. And I like what she said, the song, I Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around, because they were afraid but sometimes just singing together and having that voice of unity help them press through. So that is one of the beauties of gospel music. Oh, Joanne, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
She made it.
Oh.
And Joanne is responsible for us reading this book. She had suggested it. So it's a beautiful book, and I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm going to
Thank
ask
you.
Joanne to sing when I see her the next time.
No, you're not, because Joanne didn't say she was a singer. I did play for the church, Chris, but I don't consider myself a singer, and you wouldn't be happy with what I sang.
Oh, we love it.
I love this book. We have been reading so much of a variety of books, well-known authors, of course, academic centered, things that make us think. This one was so much fun. At the same time, I learned so much. I'll give you two things that I learned, and I wrote the quotes. How gospel music was a man's game. And then a woman said, well, it took courage to become a gospel star. But at the same time, Cheryl Wills wrote about her grandmother, Sister Opal Wills. She wrote about women, not so much about the men, although she did give credit to the father of gospel music, Thomas Dorsey. But this was so much fun for me to read in different ways. I learned so much that it took courage to become a gospel singer. And by reading the biographies of these women, even though they have been so well known in their time,
right,
I was surprised to read how young Mahalia Jackson was when she passed.
Very young.
She was only 61 years of age.
Very young woman. But what her life, I mean, when you think of gospel, she's the queen.
Yes.
She's the mother.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
Great, Chris. Thank you.
Sure.
Gospel music, it encompasses so much of the Black culture, and there's so much identity in it. It represents freedom. Those songs, those freedom singers that we just heard from, those songs of freedom and searching for freedom, connection. It's a way to connect. When you sing a congregational song and you're there harmoniously singing together, it builds people and brings them together. It also represents love. If you sing to someone, it's showing love and power. There's powerfulness in hearing a gospel song, and the power in the riffs that they do and the runs that they do. Gospel music is beautiful. It's one of my favorite genres of music. I've listened to it since I was a little girl. And that's why I was really intrigued when this book was suggested, because we can learn so much about gospel music and its inception. So Joanne, why did you suggest this book?
I was laying in the bed one morning, and they were talking on TV, and they mentioned this book, and they started playing some music, and I said, I want to read that book. And so then that's when I told you about it. But, you know, growing up, we used to sing Thomas Dorsey's music and Mahalia Jackson. I wanted to be a singer like Mahalia Jackson, but my voice just didn't have that range that she had. And I grew up basically in a house where if my grandfather wasn't home, we got to listen to a lot of secular type music. But we grew up listening to a lot of gospel music, and that's all they played in our house on Sundays was gospel music. You didn't listen to any of that other stuff.
Yes. I actually grew up the very same way. We only listened to gospel music in our home. My dad liked some other stuff, so my mom would always furl her eyebrow if he was playing that, especially on a Sunday. But I don't think I listened to secular music till I was maybe a teenager. And then I would always find the ones that had something a little bit about God in them, and just be like, see, Mom, it's okay. So yeah, I had the same experience. It's just our culture. especially Blacks from the South, which my family's from the South.
Right.
Gospel
And
music. Go ahead, Joanne.
mine is from the South also. Where in the South is your family from?
Mississippi.
Mississippi. That's where I'm from.
Yes, Mississippi.
What part of Mississippi?
DeKalb near Meridian.
Oh, okay. My 5th grade teacher was from Meridian.
Wow. Wow. Yes. Gospel has deep, deep roots. Deep roots.
Yes, it does.
Roots. So the first section, the only section we're going to go over tonight are the Queen Mothers, because I really want to slow down and get some interaction and listen to some of the music, because that's the beauty of this book, and also what influenced Joanne to want to have us read it. But the Queen Mothers, and who do we see on that picture? We see Mahalia Jackson and Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, you know, when you were talking about gospel music and the civil rights and all,
Yes.
I think gospel music probably had a good grounding with them, because a lot of the civil rights leaders back then were workers in the church or ministers.
Yes.
And so and it's a good thing that they chose that. I mean, it could have been something worse, you know.
Absolutely. 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 So I thought this was a really good picture of her and of Dr. King as we start talking about the Queen Mothers. So the Queen Mother, Mahalia Jackson, and that's her on that picture singing at John F. Kennedy's inauguration. She actually sang at his inauguration. And there she is with her beautiful hair, just beautiful, elegant woman who was just had a beautiful voice. So let's hear her. As we read in the book, when she sang in the movie Imitation of Life, which was a movie I watched a lot as a little girl.
I love that movie with
movie
Lana Turner.
Yes.
Lana Turner, and the ending, everyone in the audience was crying.
I know, my brother loved that.
Has a total ban on abortion nationwide.
Oops, so sorry. Oops, I am back, I think. There we go. An ad was playing on my screen. But yeah, just a beautiful, beautiful movie. And Mahalia Jackson singing in here was one of the highlights. Can you guys see that screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's hear.
No. I just see it says Dr. Felicia Durden has started screen sharing, but I don't see anything.
Of the world,
I hear it.
Lord of the world, out sooner will be done.
Oh, I love that song.
Lord of the world, I'm going to harmony with God. No more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing, no more weeping and wailing. I'm going home to live with my Lord, Lord, sooner.
It's the emotion.
My trouble of this world, oh, my trouble in this world, Lord, my trouble in this world, Lord, how sooner.
You know, when she's singing, I can hear the pain and suffering in the voice. Can you feel it and hear it? The pain and suffering that the song's talking about.
You know, I read a little about.
Oops.
With my
Beautiful, beautiful. Chris, go
Mhm.
ahead.
I read a story by Lana Turner, the actress, of course, well known in the movie. And of course, and I read about Sandra Dee, who was her daughter in the film. But Lana Turner said when the actors came to film this segment in the church, they were singing. Mahalia Jackson was live and singing. Lana Turner said that she and Sandra Dee, who was also well known, even though they were well known actresses and they could create emotion when the director said perform, she said, Lana Turner wrote that it was so heartbreaking when she heard Mahalia Jackson sing, that when she herself as a woman, not as the actress Lana Turner, but she herself was crying, and it wasn't a forced cry like an actress. She felt the emotion, Mahalia Jackson singing, and she was feeling her own tears. Those were her tears, her real tears. And Sandra Dee said pretty much the same thing, this young, beautiful little actress of hers. But I thought it was interesting that you have Lana Turner, a World War II generation actress, Lana and Sandra Dee from the 1960s, coming together in this one film about racism and so many terrible things that had happened because of color. The daughter who did not want to be Black, she wanted to be white, and the story. I found it interesting that this film brought together so many generations of people, Black and white, young and old, who heard Mahalia Jackson, probably in her own element, who probably would never hear her sing, except in this kind of a film.
Exactly. And this was top actors and actresses in this film. And to put Mahalia Jackson in here, that's why she was one of the most influential female vocalists of the 20th century. And in the book on page 16, it talks about this, which is why I shared that scene. When Mahalia Jackson sang the stirring hymn, Trouble of the World, during the climax of the classic film Imitation of Life, the world was introduced to the Queen of Gospel, who laid the blueprint for generations of gospel singers for the next 50 years.
Oh.
And I think from all of us just hearing that, Joanne said, you could feel it. You could just feel the song. I mean, when I was listening to songs today, preparing, I just felt chills and I felt tears come to my eyes hearing some of these beautiful melodies and the emotion, the emotion. So she is our queen. She was born in October 26 of 1911 and died January 27, 1972. And like Chris said, she lived a very short life.
Yes.
She's from New Orleans, Louisiana. But she got Grammy Awards, Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 73, the year after her death. She was in the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 78 and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1997. That's the influence that she had in the world. What else did you guys pull out about Mahalia? Joanne, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I was thinking that basically was it for me, because I always, whenever I listen to her songs, it always just made me feel like I wanted to moan and cry, and I just got right into the song with her,
Yes,
So,
and she was a businesswoman, it said on page 17. Even though Mahalia had a limited education, she became a consumer businesswoman and millionaire during her lifetime. Her obsession with immaculately pressing and styling her hair led to her eventually opening her own shop. Beauty salon.
Yes.
Her fans could see her crowning glory whipping across her head as she moved by the Spirit.
Yes.
I loved her hair. That was one of the things. Look at that picture, that gorgeous coat.
Yes.
She was a talented woman. And I remember growing up, Mahalia Jackson, that was it. Gospel music. That's who you come to mind. Mahalia.
I found it interesting that in some of the stories of the women, how they themselves fought to even think about wanting to sing in different spaces of song. And they weren't thinking of moving away from the church. But
No.
they now wanted to explore and express their music and their singing and their voices in different ways. But the men interfered and decided to think among themselves that they were committing sins because they were not staying within the church to sing gospel. Like some of the women went on to sing not jazz, but they wanted to experiment.
Right.
They wanted to test the genre. They wanted to test the tone of their music, how it sounded coming from them.
Yes.
They wanted to sing other songs, and they were brave enough to move away from that kind of thinking so that the men wouldn't keep them tied to them in different ways, even though the women were strong enough to kind of break away little by little.
That's a good point.
They did very, very well. There was one woman who I thought was interesting, that she whistled in her songs, and she was a preacher as well. Inez Andrews, she lived to be 83. Inez Andrews, she whistled in her songs and she preached and she sang. She was the founder of the legendary group called the Caravans, and the Caravans are also prominent in this story. But I would have liked to hear her whistling.
Okay, I'll have to have a clip from that one next time. She wasn't one of the ones I chose for this week.
Yes.
But I'll bring her back. Thank you.
It just was curious to me how she whistled.
Yeah.
And that was her claim. That was only she could do that, is whistle. Something that everyone would recognize because she was in tune. She decided to whistle. She was very, very good. And it was just a natural thing for her to do.
Wow.
And sing.
Joanne, do you know of Inez? Does that one sound?
No, I was listening to Chris and thinking, I did hear the Caravan Singers as a child growing up, but I never really got focused on them, and I don't recall her whistling, but like I said, I wasn't really into their music.
No, my family either. So that's interesting. We'll have to listen to her. We give her.
Yes, I'd love to hear that whistling.
Me too. Well, the next one I have is Sallie Martin. She's the next lady. She was born in 1896 and died in 1988. She's from Pittsfield, Georgia. She was known as the queen or mother of gospel. She formed the first professional gospel record group and co-founded the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choiresses. She became a successful businesswoman and established what will become the oldest continuously operating Black gospel music publisher in the US. And she was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in '91. What I love about these women, what stood out to me is their business sense. And it gets to what Chris is saying, that they were strong and they went for what they wanted. Sallie Martin, I know some of her songs, some of her music, but when looking her up today or this past week, it was good to hear her songs as well. So let's listen a little bit of Miss Sallie Martin and see what you all think of her. So one moment, we're gonna get out of Mahalia and we're gonna go to Sallie.
Are your
Martin.
kids in grades 6 to 11?
Sorry about that. I don't know why my thing wants to play ads today. We're not going to play them on here. Okay, so now we'll be back. And she's going to sing He's So Wonderful. Oops, where'd it go? One moment. There we go. And this is Sallie Martin.
Once I was a sinner, lost in my sin, and I had no peace, I love within. But then when I was searching, looking for a friend, I found Jesus. Oh yeah, saved me from the sin. I said, wonderful Jesus, oh precious thing, be so wonderful, the only time. And keep my company keeper, and he is my leader. I'm following Jesus, oh yeah, all the way. How my heart was aching.
This is the Church of God in Christ Children's Choir, who sang with her.
Okay.
Always love your children.
I will be done. I said, wonderful Savior, Prince of Peace. He's so wonderful, like the Lord to me.
Clapping. Beautiful. All right. Isn't that beautiful? She lived to be 92. She lived a longer life, 92 years old. And she also was called a mother of gospel. She had a publishing company, which was amazing at that time for a woman. And also she just embraced gospel choirs, which gospel choirs, and Joanne can speak to this too, that's a big part of gospel music, is the mass choir. They call it a mass choir, and it's hundreds of people and those voices blended together, the sopranos, altos, tenors, and that Hammond organ.
Yes, indeed. That Hammond organ.
That Hammond organ. Gotta be that Hammond organ. That's it. She just embraced it. I love it. I have an organ, you guys, but I don't know how to play it very well. That was a gift from my husband because he knows I love gospel music actually, and I have an organ in there. My dad had bought me one when I was younger too because I always loved that Hammond organ. I'm gonna learn to play one day. I'm not gonna give up on it.
Do you play piano?
I play by ear, and I only play the organ, not the piano.
That's something I always wanted to do, was play by ear, but I didn't have that talent. And every time I'd go to a church and somebody was playing by ear, and one day this guy came to our church and he was playing, and when we took a break and went outside, I went over and introduced myself and was talking to him, and I said, do you teach how to play piano by ear, or just how to play piano? He said, no, but I wish I'd played the way you do. And
I know, right?
Yeah, and I said, well, we're never satisfied with what the Lord gave us.
Right. So I thought Sallie Martin was a really good one to introduce you to. There was also,
if I may,
yes, go
the
ahead.
other thing I noticed about her singing, it was a lot like Mahalia, except she didn't have that real quality and depth to her voice, but the way she was doing the gospel song was a lot like Mahalia, and that maybe that was the style of the way they did it then.
Right. That's true. And yeah, Mahalia is Baptist, am I correct? And she's Church of God in Christ. You know how they kind of have a different, sometimes little sound to them. Church of God in Christ.
But you know what? Church of God in Christ, my mother's people were Church of God in Christ, and Church of God in Christ always had a little, I used to say rocking and rolling that music.
That's
because
right. Wait till we get to the Clark sisters. Their classic Kojic is what they call it, Chris.
Yes, Kojic. That's right.
Church of God in Christ, their Kojic is how they pronounce it. So on 22, it says, on page 22, sorry, she talks about blues, the difference between blues and gospel. Because think blues, my mom would always say, don't turn that blues off. And you're like, right, not blues. This is Michael Jackson, that's not blues. Rock, but anything that's not gospel is blues. But she said, in the blues, you're singing because you're down and out, because your man or woman left you and got you real blue. And so you tell them. In gospel, you're singing about the Lord. I don't sing the Lord just to use my tones. I don't get blue because I got the Lord in me. So I thought that was really a cute saying. But she was a shrewd businesswoman, you guys. She worked with Dorsey, and we mentioned him, to help him publish his compositions and increase the sales of his own music. But they had a dispute, and then she went and started publishing her own gospel sheet music. And became a millionaire, made a
Mhm.
lot of money. So she, again, I love that they were able to benefit from this. So that's Sallie Martin, 92 years old and just a wonderful gospel singer. I know this one, and I bet Joanne knows her, Albertina Walker. I think everybody knows Albertina.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes. What do you know about Albertina Walker?
I just know I used to listen to some of her songs.
She was a powerful singer. Shirley Caesar, if y'all are familiar with her, James Cleveland, she
Oh,
worked for him.
yes.
They were gospel legends.
Cleveland was a minister too.
Yes, James
Yeah.
Cleveland was, you can't talk about gospel without bringing up James Cleveland.
Right, right.
Yes, so Albertina Walker's from Chicago. And she was a one-time Grammy Award winner, 3 Stellar Awards, 3 Dove Awards, and a National Heritage Fellowship in 2005. And what hangs out about her, she was from the West Point Missionary Baptist Church. And Albertina and her sisters met at a recording session for a long gospel legend. They were waiting for him. And when he didn't show up, Albertina and Inez Andrews took over the lead vocals for the recording, cut a local hit, and thus the legendary Caravans were born, which Chris, you had mentioned. Talk about sisters doing it for themselves. So that was their claim to fame, is that, you know, they didn't just stand back and not do something. They had the talent, and her and Inez went ahead and sang that song. So let's listen to Albertina Walker a little bit, because she is another powerhouse singer. And I think that's the beauty of this book, is that's the songs that you can listen to and hear the people. Brings it to life. Upbeat song this time. I'll share it in just a second.
Ain't no difference what the problem. Yes, I have blessed assurance. Oh, yeah. He will take my pain and sorrow. Turn it. He will comfort, strengthen, and keep me. I can call him
You guys hear that organ?
when I need it.
I hear it.
Love together. I can go. Lord in prayer. Oh, yes, I can. Sometimes my burden, they get so heavy, Lord. Hey, hey. I have found one who is so faithful. Oh, yes, I have.
You know, when I was listening to that, I thought there's a quality to her voice that's a lot like Mahalia's.
Anyway, she has just got a gorgeous, gorgeous voice. And
Yes,
I thought that was good to hear that upbeat song that is famous in gospel. I'm sorry, Joanne, we couldn't hear you.
I said that as I was listening to her, could hear the quality in her voice that was a lot like Mahalia's.
Well, we're gonna read about that, actually, that you said that. Can you guys see the slide?
No.
Chris, can you see it?
I don't, what is that they're trying to show?
The slide. So let me see. I'm gonna stop sharing again. Something's happening with the slideshow right now. One moment.
Albertina Walker.
Okay, here we go. From present view. Can you see it now?
No.
No. Something
I
happened.
don't see it either.
Okay, something happened when I did that last song. I'm not sure what happened. It just
she came back to make sure that we were doing the right thing.
Yes. I'm telling you, that song was powerful. That was like, okay. Oh, I keep stop sharing and then it should come up. So 1 second. what it's doing is it's doing it in presenter mode. But Joanne, on page 31, if you guys have your books with you, it talks about her influence from Mahalia Jackson.
Oh,
And
does it?
Yes. Here I am. I don't know. There it is. That's the way I see it. It said, one of Albertina's idols growing up was the great Mahalia Jackson. Albertina was so determined to meet Mahalia that she showed up on Mahalia's doorstep unannounced. According to Jackson's biographer, Lorraine Guru, Jackson yelled at the young budding singer, "Girl, you got so much nerves. You even come up to my house. I ain't even invited you and you just refused to leave. But I can afford you because you remind me so much of myself coming up."
Yeah.
And so she was eventually mentored and influenced by Mahalia Jackson.
And you know, I had forgotten about when I read that, but I could hear Mahalia in her voice.
Yes. So she mentored her. And Mahalia was the one that told her, "Girl, you need to go sing by yourself." So, and she was a powerhouse. She was a powerhouse.
Well, she couldn't have picked a better one to model her voice after.
So she's another excellent one, Albertina Walker.
Yes.
So then those are the three I was going to focus on tonight. So then let's do a little bit of talking. How do you think these mothers of gospel help shape music and the perception of women? We've kind of talked about the perception of women. Chris has gone there quite a bit with how they, went on ahead and did what they needed to do. How else did these women help shape music and the perception of women? In the church, I don't think we can talk about it. We talked about so many different churches and their influence there. These were,
one of the things that, excuse me, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, honey. I'm ready.
One of the things that I think about is how several of these women were also ministers.
Yes.
And I grew up thinking that women weren't supposed to be ministers. I remember my grandfather one time when I called him and told him that I had felt a calling on my life. And he says, "So you're going to go to preaching now?" And I knew not to say yes. I said, "No, Daddy, I think I can be like a missionary or something." But in the Baptist church, well, I don't know about the white ones, but in the Black Baptist churches back then, I don't think they had many women that were ministers. But it seems like the women that were singing gospel, in a way, they were preaching to the choir, to the church.
That's true.
Even though they were singing. But then some of them that I read in here, and I can't think of the names right now, but they were actual ministers.
Right. That's very true. That's a really, really good point, Joanne. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, what do you think?
I'm not that new to gospel music where I grew up in Globe, in my hometown.
Okay.
I did go with my brother to give my mother a break. Our next door neighbor was a preacher at the African-American church in our neighborhood. And she was also the singer and the preacher. And we did have a lot of people come to the church. And she would take me and my brother. We were just maybe 7 or 8 years old. But when she started to sing, and she was the only one who sang because of her voice, and not just because she was the preacher, not just because she played the piano, but her voice carried over to so many in the church. And it was like she was preaching, but singing. And it got to where you couldn't tell the difference because the words of the song were pretty much like the words of a sermon. And she wasn't singing a sermon as much as she was spreading the word of Jesus through the voice that she had, through the tenor of the voice, and the tone of the voice. She was able to control her throat so that it wasn't rash, it wasn't loud, it was soft, but she was sermon singing. as she called it,
Mm.
sermon singing. I don't know if that's a phrase or
Yeah,
not, but
I
she
do know
Sermon
what you
singing.
mean.
sermon,
Did she-
sermon singing. Yes, that's what she
Did-
did. And even when we were little, my brother and I, as adults, would remember her and talk about it and how much we loved going there with Mrs. Gray.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that was a new phrase that I never forgot her saying, that
Yes.
she was sermon singing.
Sermon
Chris, do you know if she ever made a record?
No, she was just a woman from our neighborhood. Her husband was also a preacher,
Mhm.
and they were from Globe, Arizona, Miami, Arizona, mainly Globe. They were involved in their own church.
Right.
And then they moved away, went to Phoenix, but I don't believe she became well known or made any records or anything like that. She just loved to sing, and she loved her church, and she
Mhm.
loved everyone who came to the church. And it was just so wonderful. I have wonderful memories of that. It was just wonderful to me.
Yeah. It'd been nice if she'd been able to make a record so we could hear it.
Oh,
I
yes.
know.
Yeah, yes. Well,
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great?
yes.
I think one of the things that I saw from them is that they showed that women could lead.
Mhm.
They could make record companies. They could be in the forefront. They didn't have to just be the background singer. Mahalia was strong.
And they could also be in the Gospel Music Hall of Fame.
Yes, they could. These women, I mean, they are powerful. I love it. Isn't Her Grace amazing? This is a really good book. I wanted to start it off slow, and I know we'll have more people on our next call. So we're going to prepare. Next time, we're going to talk about sisters. And we're going to have some really good ones with like the Clark sisters. And we're going to go into the next chapter after that too, because we need to finish the book pretty soon. And Architects of the Melody. So I'd say we're going to finish this book in about 3 times, but we really want to go and take our time and really learn from this. So the next time we're going to meet is September the 21st. That's going to be a Wednesday at 5 p.m. We think that time's going to work better. Chris, does 5 work for you still?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So that'll be our next meeting. Will be September 21st at 5 p.m.
Okay.
I want to
you
say,
think we'll go up to what page? How far you think we'll go? Because I've already read it, but I need to go back and glance at some
Go
of
back 2 and 3, chapter 2 and 3.
chapters 2 and 3. Okay.
and that would be page 109. Chapter 3 begins on page 109, Joanne.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a question
Right.
for you, Professor. I have a question.
Absolutely.
I read about Roberta Martin,
Mhm.
that she was she known? I didn't understand. Was she really called the Berry Gordy of gospel music? Can we talk about that later? I
Yeah,
didn't
I need to
understand
look into
that.
that one. Yeah, that
Okay. Was that Roberta Martin, that she was supposed to be the Berry Gordy of gospel music? I didn't get that. I mean, I know who Berry Gordy is, but
I do too.
I didn't understand what that meant in terms of her.
And what's the singer's name? Roberta
And I wrote my notes, but I'm thinking it's
Roberta Martin.
Roberta
Oh,
Martin.
that's in the Architects. Yes, we'll
Yes.
discuss her for
On
sure.
chapter 3.
Yes.
Yes,
I'll
I'd like
just-
to know that. Yeah.
I'll get some background research on her.
Okay.
Excellent.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a good book, and I think we're going to really continue to enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoy tonight.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Definitely.
Okay.
Dr. Durden,
Yes.
thank you for the background work that you're doing on it and bringing us some music to listen.
Oh, that's the fun piece. You guys don't know how much joy that's bringing me. It's bringing back memories. I'm enjoying myself.
Yes, when I heard Mahalia, I thought, oh, there's that voice.
Voice and magical.
It's almost like it gets in there and massages you.
I'm telling you, I can't wait to listen to it some more tonight. Bring it
Oh,
back.
that's a nice feeling,
Mhm.
Joanne. That's a nice thing that you just said. I understood that. That's so nice of you. Wow.
It massage it in.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
it does. Okay.
Yes.
So thank you both, and we can start recording.
Okay.
All right.
And